You know, Joel, that brings me to you and your experience with the New York Stock Exchange. That was a tremendous challenge for you within, I'm not sure, you were with SAP for only about a couple of years when that became your opportunity. And much younger, Yen.
We all were.
Dealing with the financials is one point, but when we discussed prior to our panel, you talked about managing the expectations and the conversations with your staff, and even parts of other teams that were not necessarily directly reporting to you, you had to communicate the change to various components within SAP teams, like the sales team, and I wonder if you could share your experience.
For a little background, it was in the mid to late 1990s, I think in 1997 we started. We were already listed in Germany, but we wanted to list in New York on the New York Stock Exchange. So it was a big change. I don't think anyone realized how big the change could be. It was taking the company from a German accounting to a U.S. accounting, and one thing in particular is the revenue recognition for software stricter and well-defined after the dot-com era in the U.S. So my biggest challenge was going to a bunch of sales folks and telling them that, hey, I'm here to reduce your software revenue and as a result your compensation, which is not a great place to start from. But
they love that.
They love that. They love that. But you quickly change that discussion and get them to trust you and work with you versus starting from that point of contradiction, I'll call it. And there was three main things, if I categorize them, that made that go so well. One was executive sponsorship, and the board was behind that project all in. We were going to list in the New York Stock Exchange. So they had my back. That was the trust. Regardless of how high up in the organization, how loud people got, they were there to support me and make sure I could be successful. The second thing, and this carries to everything I've done since that day, there has to be a reason for change. There better be a damn good reason. You can't change just to change. I call it the business opportunity or your business objectives. And when I think back at what those business objectives were for SAP, there's two big reasons. One, we were a global software company, and our largest competitors were U.S. companies listed on the New York Stock Exchange or on the NASDAQ, and they made claims that you can't really compare Oracle's, there's a slip, SAP's results to some of our competitors, or Oracle, for example, because we're on different accounting standards. So that was one thing, so we could be transparent and comparable. And the second reason was because of stock options. And it was that time where technology companies were offering stock options to attract employees and to retain employees. And in order to give them to U.S. employees, you actually have to list. It's an offering. So we had to list. So you can quickly turn that conversation, I'm here to reduce your revenue, into I'm here to get you all stock options, and all of a sudden the team's working with you on that one. Mm-hmm. And the last thing is really communication. As soon as we discussed this with the board and the CFO at that time, they realized this is a much larger transition than was expected. And they immediately shipped us off to every major subsidiary. We met with every managing director of those subsidiaries. We met with the entire sales teams of each of those subsidiaries, and we had some great interaction where I know personally I learned a lot about different cultures throughout the world. And the intelligence of all of those people who are not accountants but are really good at getting around rules or transition business to conform to rules it was a pleasure. I expected it to be a painful debate, but in the end they learned a lot, I learned a lot, and it really triggered our success. So just a great life experience.
I wonder if you can share, Bill, what derails change? I mean, you talk about communication, you talk about buy-in, executive sponsorship. What do you think is probably the top list of derailment tactics?
I think we just named a bunch of them, and
right.
I think I was actually making notes
right.
as everyone was talking, and one of the common themes through here that I heard was this idea of trust.
Right.
And Bridgette, you asked a great question. Well, is that IQ or EQ? And in some respects, that's a bit of a theoretical argument. But what I do know is that when we trust someone, we feel safe with them. We feel like they'll support us. We feel like if they say they're going to do something, they'll do it, and then that won't negatively impact us. And when we feel at risk from a safety perspective, not physical safety, but our emotional system is also there to manage our other types of safety and relational safety. And when we don't trust someone, that does then trigger that emotional system. So there's definitely a strong emotional aspect to it. And there's also a cognitive aspect to it, which is kind of sometimes what I make up about a situation. So I can see a change coming, or think Joel is a bad guy because he's affecting my comp plan, or so we have these cognitive thoughts that then we react and respond to. And in fact, in the breakout session, Lisa and I are going to talk about sort of the 10%, 90% rule in terms of how you're thinking, and we tend to focus on the 10% and not the 90%. So there's definitely a tie between both. But change really gets derailed when trust gets eroded. If people don't trust that management has people's best intention in mind, if people don't trust that they're going to be included and involved, that their needs will be taken care of, that's when things start to get derailed.
That's very insightful. I really appreciate that, and it actually made me wonder back to Bridgette. And I understand, we all know that Bridgette has a military experience, and I made the connection with trust. And I don't know if trust is intrinsic when you're in the military, or maybe untrustful until you've experienced the military. I wonder how you can draw on that experience in your leadership style.
Yeah, by the way, anybody else in the room that served, thank you for your service. I don't think we say that enough, unless a camera's on you somehow. So stop somebody in the airport on your way home and make sure you tell them. But you know what I think is that the thing about the military is they teach you how to be on a team first. I enlisted. I didn't go in as an officer. Not to say that as an officer your life would be different, but mine was a little dirtier. It was a little kind of down in the weeds. And the thing that we learned right off the bus on day one is nobody here is any more important than anyone else, and everybody here has the potential to save or create a solution in a very difficult situation. And you put a lot of people in one room, and you guys all know this, you don't all like each other. And we learned very quickly to lose those dynamics because it just didn't matter. And you just had to be on a team, and you learned how to appreciate and identify quite quickly what someone's strong suit is, and let them lead with that, and trust them that they had that, and then you learn where their strong suit was not, and to have their back in that area. And I think that in order to be a great leader, you first have to be a great team member. And so the military helped me to be a good team member first. But beyond that, you learn how to trust, because you're given orders, requirements that you can't question, and you have to just take care of them. And so you have to have a trust that the people that perhaps you've never even met, that formulated a plan that perhaps could even put you in harm's way, had it together, and this was their strong suit, and this is what they were doing. And there's a lot of parallels in business, because you might not necessarily know the person that sits in the corner office that makes a decision about some type of investment or initiative that impacts your livelihood or impacts what you do directly. And you have to appreciate that they've got what they're doing down, and then you're going to do your best, and you're going to take what your core competency is and give it your 200%. So I think there's a lot of parallels, but interesting that it really doesn't matter what environment you're in. Trust is always the commodity that you got to have your arms around.